I am making an Earthbound Yubel deck profile. I figured Earthbound would be a fun thing to mix Yubel with, since they are all Dark Fiends, with an exception to 6 of the Immortals. And two of the Immortals, although actually have a little bit of synergy with the Yubel, so I figured why not try the two together and see how it works. Overall, I like it. There's a few things I would like to work better than I thought they would have, but overall I still really like how the deck works. Starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Samsara D Lotus. Samsara D Lotus has the effect that you contribute it to then special summon a Yubel monster from your deck, and then during the end phase, if you control a Yubel, then you can special summon this card from your graveyard. And if you control a Yubel, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you contribute this card to then change that monster's effect to destroy. Your opponent destroys 1 Yubel monster your opponent controls. So, like, say the normal summon Snake Eye Ash, you can use Samsara D Lotus to change Ash's effect to destroy a Yubel monster. And you can only use each effect of Samsara D Lotus once per turn. Really? Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper. Groundkeeper has the effect that while there's a field spell, that if there's a field spell in play, then your Earthbound monsters can't be destroyed. And then it also has the effect that when it's summoned, you can special summon a level, I believe it was level 5 or lower. Yeah, level 5 or lower Earthbound monster from your deck. And then, let's see. If you use this effect, you can't special summon the extra except for fusion Synchro monsters. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Yep. However, the only thing that Groundskeeper can't summon is another copy of itself. And then next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Linewalker. Linewalker has the effect that when it's normal or special summon, lets you add either Earthbound Prison or Harmonic Synchro Fusion from your deck or graveyard to your hand, as I believe it's hand or deck or grave. Yep. And then you can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 monster your opponent controls. That was special. I believe it's special summon from the extra deck. See, target 1 effect monster your opponent controls. So special in the extra deck, shuffle it into the extra deck, and then your opponent can summon 1 monster from the extra deck that's the same name as the monster shuffled, the same original name as the monster shuffled back. That effect is never used, and it exists for one of the extra deck monsters being Earthbound Servant Geograffin. And you can only use each effect of Linewalker once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prisoner Stonesweeper. Stonesweeper is a free body if there's a field spell in play, and as you can just special summon from your hand, and then you can discard it from your hand to then add any level, I believe it's 4 or lower Fiend Tuner. My bad, you add any level 3 or lower Fiend Tuner. And once again, you can only use each effect as Stonesweeper once per turn. And then for the Immortals, because I have to play them, is 1 copy of Earthbound Immortal Chaku Chalua and 1 copy of Earthbound Immortal Asila Piscu. These two have Chaku Chalua has the effect that while it's in defense mode, your opponent cannot enter their battle phase. And then once per turn, it can inflict piercing battle damage. It can inflict damage to your opponent equal to half of its defense. However, if you use this effect, it can't attack that turn. And then Asila Piscu has the effect that if it leaves the field, other than by its own effect, it then destroys all special summon monsters your opponent controls and inflicts 800 damage to your opponent for each one. And then they also share the effect that there's not a face-up field spell, then they self-destruct, they can't be targeted for attacks, and then they can attack directly. Next, I play 3 copies of Spirit of Yubel. Spirit of Yubel has the effect that it can't, or all the Yubel monsters themselves share the effect that they can't be destroyed by battle, and you don't take any battle damage from battles involving them. And then Spirit of Yubel has the effect that if your opponent declares an attack, you can special summon activates the effect in hand to reveal it and then summon it from your hand. And then when Spirit of Yubel is normal or special summoned, you can then add to your hand or set a spell or trap that mentions Yubel, which that's part of the reason why cards like Droll and Lockbird aren't actually that good against an actual Yubel deck. Because of the fact that this card can also let you set the card, means that you don't actually have to search it. However, it does stop if you were going after your Nightmare Pain. And then next, I play 3 copies of Yubel. Yubel has the effect that if it has the same effect as Spirit Yubel as far as the shared effect, and then if Yubel is targeted for an attack in an attack position, then it can activate its effect to have your opponent take damage equal to their attacking monster's attack points. And then during the end phase, you tribute one other monster you control, or else Yubel is destroyed. And then if Yubel is destroyed other than by its own effect, you can special summon a Yubel Terrorincarnate from your deck, or hand, deck, or graveyard. Yep. Speaking of Terrorincarnate, I play 2 copies of Yubel Terrorincarnate. Terrorincarnate does the exact same thing as Yubel, only instead of requiring the tribute of a monster, it is an end phase, destroy all other monsters. And then if Yubel Terrorincarnate is destroyed, then you get to special summon 1 copy of Yubel the Ultimate Nightmare from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And then the Ultimate Nightmare has the same protection effect as all the Yubel monsters. And then at the end of the damage step, after it battles a monster, you can destroy that monster, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack on the field. And that's it for the Yubel monsters. Or for the monsters in general. For these spells, I play 1 copy of Earthbound Fusion. Earthbound Fusion can only be activated, during the main phase, unless there's a card in the field zone. And then after that, it's just a generic fusion card. Be certain, because I actually haven't read it. Let's see. So let's just let you fusion summon a Dark Fusion monster using monsters from hand or field. And then during the main phase, if a card is in the field zone, you can banish this card from your graveyard. Special summon an Earthbound monster from your hand or graveyard. However, you cannot special summon from the extra deck except for Synchro and Fusion monsters. Which, the Fusion and Synchro monsters is just because of the little gimmick card for the Earthbound cards, but I'll get to that later. Next, I also play 1 copy of 1 for 1. 1 for 1 lets you send a monster from your hand to the graveyard to then special summon a level 1 monster from your hand or deck. I would play more than 1 of this, but due to banelist reasons, I'm only playing the 1. Honestly, I feel like this card would be dangerous if it was ever at more than 1. Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Prison. Earthbound Prison has the effect that when it's activated, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls and negate that monster's effects while this card is in play. And then it has the other effect that during the main phase, you can normal summon 1 Earthbound monster in addition to your normal summoner set. And then, if this card is destroyed or banished, or as I believe that's the triggering requirement for it. Okay, no. If this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, then it has the effect to then negate all face-up cards your opponent controls until the end of the turn, and then have your opponent's life points. Which, one thing that actually made me laugh is I was testing this deck, and I had 3 of these in my opening hand, and not much I could do if the Yubel cards don't work, because I had 3 of these. I had Samsara de Lotus, and I want to say the last card was a Dark Roller No More, because I was cited for going second. And I had drawn for turn, I forget what it was. I want to say it was a Called by the Grave. And then my opponent flipped Eradicator Epidemic Virus, tributing a monster, then destroying 5 of the cards in my hand. However, because 3 of them were Earthbound Prison, all 3 of their effects activated. So they were able to negate 1 of them, but then the other 2 then proceeded to then negate all their face-up cards until the end of the turn and have their life points to 2,000. And then from there, the Yubel deck was able to just deal the remaining 2,000 damage. So sometimes having Prison can actually be really good. And then next, I play 3 copies of Nightmare Pain. Nightmare Pain has the effect that during your main phase, you can destroy a dark monster in your hand or face-up field, to then be able to add 1 card that mentions Yubel from your deck to your hand, except for another Nightmare Pain. And then it also has the effect that any of your opponent's monsters that can attack must attack a Yubel monster you control. So they aren't allowed to attack any other monsters, which I actually really like. And then the final effect of it is your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving a Yubel monster. So one thing I really like about that is that I was playing against someone who was playing, what was it? I want to say Kashira Horus, but it was more of a Light and Darkness Dragon deck, probably. And they have flipped Skill Drain. Well, turns out, even though my monsters were being destroyed because of Skill Drain, negating their effects, due to Nightmare Pain, they were the only ones taking damage. Because they attacked Spirit of Yubel, then Spirit of Yubel summoned Yubel, then they attacked Terrorincarnate, then they had to attack the Ultimate Nightmare, but on their attack on the Ultimate Nightmare, I summoned the Loving Defender Forever, which stopped all their attacks. Which, if I would have thought about it, I would have just stopped or let them take the final bit of damage. And then next, I put 3 copies of Harmonic Synchro Fusion. This is the Earthbound gimmick card that I think is actually pretty funny, as it lets you tribute 2 monsters, being 1 tuner and 1 non-tuner, to then special summon from your extra deck 2 monsters, a fusion and synchro that can be made using those 2 monsters. What most people tend to do with this is, like in Runic Earthbound, they would tribute Earthbound Prisoner Groundkeeper and Sleipnir of the Runic Maiden, to then be able to summon Baron de Fleur, being a level 10 synchro, using the level 1 tuner and level 9 non-tuner, and then Predaplant Dracos Tapelia, using the Runic Fusion monster and a Dark monster. However, if you use this, then you can't summon from the extra deck except for Fusion and Synchro monsters, which isn't that big a deal, especially with how my extra deck is. And then to finish off the spells, well, that was loud. I play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Super Polymerization, this lets you discard 1 card to fusion summon a fusion monster using monsters from either side of the field, and neither player can activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. And as far as I know, there's only 2 cards that can actually negate Super Polymerization. Those being Cerulean Skyfire, and I always forget the Mermail card. It's like Mermail Abyss Scale something. But usually you're using this with a Yubel monster to summon Yubel the Loving Defender Forever. And for the traps, I'm only playing 3 copies of Eternal Favorite. Eternal Favorite lets you activate 1 of 2 effects per turn. However, if you have 2 of then you can activate both of their effects in a single turn. So each of the effects are hard ones for turns, but you can activate the effects of Eternal Favorite multiple times a turn, but only 1 per copy. Those effects are, of course, let you summon a Yubel monster that is in your graveyard or banished. Or you can send it to the graveyard and discard 1 card for cost, to then be able to fusion summon using monsters from either side of the field as material, including a Yubel monster. And that is it for my Earthbound Yubel's main deck. Now for the extra deck. For the extra deck, I'm still experimenting a little bit with the ratios. But starting off with the extra deck, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geog Gremlin. Geog Gremlin has the effect that once per turn, you can target one monster your opponent controls. And they can do one of two things, where they can either increase your life points by half of that monster's attack, or they can destroy that monster. And then during the battle phase, you can activate Geog Gremlin's effect to then be able to fusion summon an Earthbound monster by using monsters, or by banishing monsters from your hand, or field, grave, and I believe hand. Yeah, by banishing monsters from your hand, field, or graveyard. The only downside is that it has to be an Earthbound fusion monster, so you can't just banish things from grave and summon any fusion monster you want. Next, I play 2 copies of Earthbound Servant Geog Griffin. Geog Griffin has the effect that once per turn you can you can special summon an Earthbound monster from your graveyard in defense position. And then it has another effect where if it leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can target one card your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, your opponent takes, 300 damage per Earthbound with different name. Destroy one card on the field, then inflict 300 damage for each Earthbound monster with different name in your field, or on your field and in your graveyard. Okay, and it does not actually target to destroy, so that's a plus. I always forget that doesn't target. And then next I play 2 copies of Earthbound Servant Geog Grina. Geog Grina has the effect that when fusion summoned, you can add an Earthbound monster from your deck to your hand. And then once per turn, you can target one Synchro monster you control, and it can attack your opponent directly that turn. And then its final effect is if an opponent's monster is destroyed by a card effect, you can target the destroyed monster in the graveyard, or as I believe it targets in the graveyard. Let's see. Monsters your opponent controls is destroyed by an Earthbound card effect. Target one of those destroyed monsters. Okay, so it doesn't have to be in the graveyard. You just target one of the destroyed monsters, and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. Next, I play 3 copies of Earthbound Servant Geog Kraken. Geog Kraken has the effect that once fusion summoned, you can add a field spell from, I want to say, deck or graveyard to hand. Yeah, you add a field spell from deck or grave to hand. And then, if your opponent special summons a monster, then once per turn, you can activate its effect to destroy all special summon monsters your opponent controls, and then deal, I believe it's another 800 points of damage per monster destroyed. Yep, and you can only use each effect of Earthbound Servant Geog Kraken once per turn. And to finish off the Earthbound monsters, I then play 2 copies of Earthbound Servant Geog Grina. Geog Grina has the effect that, let's see, I believe it has some kind of protection effect. Okay, it does not. It has the effect that it must be fusion summoned, and at the start of the damage step, you can activate its effect to change. When it battles a monster at the start of the damage step, you can activate its effect to change that opposing monster's attack and defense to 0. And then if Geog Grina destroys an opponent's monster in battle, it then has the effect where you can destroy your opponent's entire board. And then if Geog Grina is destroyed by an opponent's card, it's either destroyed or leaves the field. I don't remember. I want to say it's when it leaves the field. Let's see. If this face-up card on its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon an Earthbound monster from your deck or extra deck. The only downside is it can't be Geog Grina, as Geog Grina has to be fusion summoned. And unfortunately, Grasha's effect does not treat it as its summoning as an extra deck summoning. But like Geog Grina is one of my favorites though, because if it kills a monster in battle, it destroys your opponent's entire board. And if it leaves because of an opponent's card, you summon a new Earthbound monster to take its place. And finally, because this is an Yubel deck, I play 3 copies of Yubel, the Loving Defender Forever. Loving Defender just requires Yubel plus 1 or more effect monsters. And then Loving Defender, unlike the rest of the Yubel monsters, cannot be destroyed by card effect while also being unable to be destroyed in battle. You can take any battle damage from battles involving it. And lastly, when it's fusion summoned, you can activate its effect to inflict 500 damage to your opponent per material that was used. And its final effect is when it battles at the end of the damage step after it battles a monster, you can banish that monster and then inflict damage to your opponent's life points equal to the amount equal to that monster's original attack. And that is it for my Yubel Earthbound deck profile. If you have any ideas what I can do to improve the deck, any ideas for decks like to see made in the future, or decks like to see face each other, like I'm currently working on finding someone that can play Red Dragon Archfiend for Earthbound versus Red Dragon. So if you have any suggestions, comment below, and thank you for watching.